Today's press conference is why you bring back Kevin King. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, a podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. I'm really pulling for Kevin King this year, and I really hope this doesn't bite me in the ass. Grossi, and today we're going to be breaking down the press conference that Kevin King held in which he finally addressed the NFC Championship game. He also addressed the drafting of Eric Stokes, his health, and really provided some, in my opinion, really great insight as to why he came back to Green Bay, his pursuit of a Super Bowl, and how he fits into all of that. And honestly, it was one of the better press conferences that I've ever seen. Before we get to that, I want to do a big shout and thank you to some brand new patrons and YouTube members. First, on the Patreon side of things, we have Angryist, and we have the Lore Queen herself going to the 1919 tier. A big shout out and thank you to the both of you. And over on the YouTube side of things, we have Angryist, who's double dipping. A big shout out and thank you to you. So yes, let's talk about Kevin King, who we've talked about on this show, it seems like ad nauseum. Because when the Green Bay Packers decided to re-sign Kevin King, a lot of fans were very vocal about their displeasure and how they didn't want him on the team, especially after a disastrous, and it was a disastrous NFC Championship game. They wanted to move on. On top of that, they drafted Eric Stokes in the first round, obviously highlighting their need for a CB. And I when he got re-signed, I understood the displeasure, but I also said that this is not the worst thing in the world. The Packers are bringing in a new defensive coordinator in Joe Barry, right? He could potentially excel there. Hopefully he's healthy this season, but at the bare minimum, it allowed Eric Stokes to get his feet wet, not be thrown right into the fire, have to start immediately, because corner is one of the most difficult positions to transition from in college to the pros. And if you don't believe me, look at Okudah and the Lions, for example, last year. Look at Josh Jackson, who we just got rid of. Look at Demarius Randall. Look at Quentin Rollins. Like, this is a very difficult position in the NFL. And with Kevin King, while yes, the NFC Championship game was bad, yes, his health is a problem, but when he is healthy, he does provide some consistency. He's been in that secondary for the past 4 years. And so again, at minimum, it allowed Eric Stokes to develop a little bit more. And before we jump into Kevin King's press conference, you have to go back to what Matt LaFleur said about Kevin King today, kind of highlighting what I just talked about. He said that Kevin King's value in our building is much higher than maybe the public perception. They hear it. They hear all the fans saying, oh my God, you re-signed Kevin King. This is a disaster, blah, blah, blah. But LaFleur basically said that when Kevin King is healthy, he is a very good CB. He gives wide receivers problems, and he's not wrong. He's not wrong because he is pretty consistent when he is healthy. The problem is, of course, the when he is healthy part. And on top of that, he does have really bad games like the NFC Championship game. Now, Kevin King, going into his 5th year, 26 years old, still dealing with a hamstring issue, might not play in Saturday's preseason game. But Kevin King really didn't shy away from too many questions today, because this was basically the first time he faced the media since January's NFC Championship game. And when asked about re-signing with the Packers, he was very blatant and said that he didn't want to be anywhere else. He says, we have all the pieces here to get over that hump. Elaborating, saying, our hump is the dance. Right? For other teams, it might be getting to 500, he mentioned. But here, we've been to back-to-back NFC Championship games. Getting over that hump is getting to the Super Bowl. So that was his mindset in wanting to sign with the Packers. And later on, at the very end of the press conference, when asked about, listen, you had a disastrous NFC Championship game. Would you want to potentially re-sign somewhere else just to get a fresh start? He said, I'm not the type of guy to sweep shit under the rug. I want to finish this with my guys. And like, that's a phenomenal answer. And to be completely honest, Kevin King did not have a good NFC Championship game and could have very easily go, you know what? Let me go to another team. I get a fresh start there with a new DC, with new guys, and that's it. But he said, nay. Like, it was a learning experience. I learned from it, and now let's try and go to a Super Bowl. He mentioned that he's 1 of 11 on that defense. He can only do what he's in control of, and he's going to do everything he can for the team for them to get over that hump. Because he blatantly said that the NFC Championship game, he's not sure that's one of those things that you quote unquote get over. He's very well aware of the Scotty Miller play before halftime. He's very aware of the pass interference at the very end. And while Matt LaFleur basically went to bat for King a little bit and said there was a miscommunication between him and Pettine and then what was going on in defense, basically that's why Kevin King was out of position. Kevin King was not willing to throw Pettine under the bus, which again, I kind of like because he's a very team-centric guy. And you could see as Aaron Rodgers talked about in his press conference in the beginning of this season and was talking about high character guys, I think if anything, this press conference shows that Kevin King is one of those guys. Because if you need to look any further, look at his answer about Eric Stokes, because he said that he's been asked a lot about Eric Stokes. He said, hell, even after he was drafted, they brought in Jair Alexander and Josh Jackson back to back. But when asked about Eric Stokes, he says, I don't think too much into it. He's not going to withhold anything from Stokes. And one of the best quotes that he said from this press conference was, if he beats me out on that field, then they drafted the right guy. I mean, what else could you ask for? He's flat out saying, like, listen, let's get that competition going. If he beats me out, good job, Packers. Then they obviously made the right decision. If not, this is why I'm here. And this honestly reminded me of like the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers dynamic a little bit. And then Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love get along very well. But Aaron Rodgers basically said the same exact thing before Jordan Love was even drafted. He said this about the Packers drafting a QB before the 2020 NFL draft and said, listen, they can draft and bring in whoever they want. I'm going to beat them out. And Kevin King is basically saying the same exact thing. And if that doesn't happen, well, then the Packers did a good job. Later on in the press conference, he was asked about Joe Barry, and he basically elaborated and said that he does a great job explaining the why of things. There was a great quote in which he said, I can see why the Rams were the #1 defense last year, and we're going to take that spot. Absolutely love that confidence. Finishing it off by saying, I'm going to be one of the top players in this league, and nobody can take that from me. So it's very obvious that Kevin King has a ton of confidence. And I mean, listen, I love that. For a guy who had a really, really bad game, I think if he left the Green Bay Packers after that, definitely would have left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, and definitely would have been like, okay, that's the legacy of Kevin King. But this year, he has a chance to rewrite that. If Kevin King is healthy, if he's consistent, and he's a good CB2, then hell, this is the last dance for him too. Then he has the potential to change a lot of people's minds. Now, I will say, I don't think he really cares about that, because the #1 theme about this entire press conference was about the team and that he wants to win it with his guys. They want to get over the hump. They want to get a ring. And I know that we've been focusing so much on guys like Randall Cobb and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams about the last dance. But for some people on this defense, Kevin King included, this might also be their last dance. And if that's not going to motivate you to go and get a ring, then I don't know what we're doing here. So I was just super impressed with Kevin King today. And again, I will stand by it that I don't think it's a bad thing they brought him back, because it allows for Eric Stokes to develop. He already has a lot of familiarity with a lot of the secondary that's there. There's a lot of consistency there. So let's see if Kevin King can translate these words into action and have a great season. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How did you feel about the press conference? How do you feel about Kevin King on the Packers? You pulling for him a little bit more now, or you're just like, no, be healthy and perform better, and then we'll talk. Let me know. You know, find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or Tom Grossi Comedy, all social media, see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.